Welcome, friends, to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate. It's so we can elevate. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to offer you the hope that your crucible experiences, those challenges and trials you faced or are facing at this moment, don't define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you. They happened for you. And I don't know anybody who knows that better. And I've surveyed a lot of the people I know. I don't know anybody who knows that better than the founder of Beyond the Crucible, the host of this show, and my friend Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, this is going to be a good one again. And I'm particularly excited about it because the movie that we're going to discuss as part of our special summer series, Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons, was one of my favorite movies growing up, and it remains a favorite of mine. So I'm looking forward to a robust discussion.
Absolutely, Gary. This truly is a great movie with a lot of powerful lessons, uplifting, redemptive lessons. It's a very good movie, and looking forward to discussing it.
That very good movie, folks, that Warwick is talking about is Rocky, the original Rocky. From 1976. So we're going back a bit in time to get through it. This isn't the oldest film that we've done in the series, but it's one of the older ones that we've done in the series. And again, just to kind of level set you where we're at, we are in the series Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons, a 9-week series we're doing this summer. The reason that we're doing it is a couple of years ago, you may recall, we did a series in the summer on action films, on superhero action films, on sports hero films, on historical hero films. We focused on the heroes then. And this movie that we're talking about today, Rocky, would have fit perfectly in that first series, I think, Warwick. Maybe we'll expand the series at some point. We'll just add this one into that as well. We'll get a 2-for-1 out of this one. But what we're doing this time around, different than heroic films, everybody, is we're doing the American Film Institute every few years, every decade or so, does a list of their 100 most critically acclaimed films in American history. And Rocky happens to be one of those films, like all the other previous ones that we've talked about. This is part 8 of the series. The first 7 parts were also on AFI's top 100 list. And Rocky comes in at 57 on that list. So as I do all the time, Warwick, let me have you set for everybody why we're talking about classic films in the context of Beyond the Crucible. Why is that subject, classic film, such a wellspring to pull lessons from about bouncing back from crucible experiences?
Yeah, what I love about classic films is there's typically a protagonist up against very long odds or a crisis that tests their character or their soul. It's typically a main character who's up against an incredibly difficult situation. And we see in the movie, are they going to rise above their circumstances? Are they going to be defined by it? And so that's really the test in a lot of these classic films. And the greatest films just pull us in because we're rooting for the character. We're hoping they'll rise above their circumstances, their crucibles. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's really why we're so drawn to them. We always want to see a redemptive arc in a movie where the main character learns something, and that's really what classic films offer us.
Yeah, and it's interesting, though, in this series, the first 2 films that we discussed, right, Citizen Kane and The Godfather, they didn't have a redemptive arc, but they still had plenty of lessons. So I think that's one of the things that makes this AFI series that we're doing really interesting and robust, is that you can still learn lessons even when there's not a redemptive arc in a film. And I think we pulled those out. So that's just one tick of this that makes it extra interesting, I think. And it's absolutely, as I said, it's absolutely the case with this movie, Rocky. The movie was written by star Sylvester Stallone when he was just a struggling actor. He hadn't appeared in many films, and the films he appeared in weren't all that successful. He wrote the movie as well as starred in it, Rocky, and it ended up winning the Best Picture Oscar of 1976. Stallone wrote the script, check this out, folks, in 3.5 days. 3.5 days he wrote the script to an Oscar-winning film. And what spurred him to write it? He was a fan of boxing, Stallone was, and he watched a title fight that I'm going to look it up here. On March 24th, 1975, Muhammad Ali was the heavyweight champion of the world, and he fought a man named Chuck Wepner, a boxer named Chuck Wepner, who was not, shall we say, Smoking Joe Frazier. It was not George Foreman. He was not one of the big name great heavyweights of the time, Ken Norton. He was a guy who just kind of fought and sort of existed. He was best known for his nickname. He was known as the Bayonne Bleeder. He was from Bayonne, New Jersey, and he was noteworthy as a fighter because he could take a lot of punishment, and he bled a bit after he took it. But when he fought Ali on that date in 1975, March 24th, it was interesting, and it struck Stallone that Wepner lasted until the 15th round with Ali, who was, right, the greatest of all time. That's his nickname. Ali's nickname is the greatest. He even knocked Ali down in the 9th round. And that just moved Stallone, and he found a ripe story within there that he could make dramatic, and that's why he wrote the script. 3.5 days, he gets it produced. One of his conditions, though, he wouldn't sell the script unless he got to star. So even though he had no hit movies on his resume, he starred as Rocky as well as writing the film. The interesting part of Rocky, let's start the conversation here. The promotional tagline for the movie was his whole life was a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. And that's precisely the character we meet when Rocky opens. We first see Rocky Balboa. He's fighting in a ramshackle club in Philadelphia, his hometown. The crowd is booing him. The man working in his corner tells him between rounds that he's fighting like a bum. His opponent, a man named Spider Rico, colorful boxing nicknames, headbutts him late in the fight to try to gain an advantage, which then makes Rocky angry, so Rocky really whips up on him pretty soundly after that. He ends up winning the fight. As he's walking out of the ring, he bums a cigarette off a spectator, and a woman in the crowd yells, you can hear her, clear as a bell, "You're a bum," she yells at the guy who just won the fight, Rocky. In the locker room, then, he gets his winnings from his victory, and that comes out to $40.55. Or let's start here. The opening scene does an excellent job in a very short period of time of setting up the life that Rocky Balboa is living. As we'll see in the narrative that follows, Rocky's life doesn't look very good, very bright, very promising, does it?
Yeah, that's so true, Gary. At this early point in the movie, Rocky Balboa's life, it looks grim, it looks pretty dire, it looks dismal. It seems like he lives to fight and gets beat up as part of his work. And then, as we'll see, as he's going out of the gym or wherever he is fighting, says, you have a fight in another couple of weeks. It seems like his life is going to boxing matches, getting beat up and not doing very well. And not only that, he doesn't really get any appreciation for what he's doing. The fans certainly don't like it. They call him a bum. It's really not a very auspicious beginning to his story. It's like, who wants to be Rocky Balboa? You're in your job, you just get beat up and booed, and people call you a bum. I mean, it's not a very uplifting or hopeful start to his story.
No, for sure not. But there is something very interesting in that opening scene where he fights Spider Rico that if you blink, you'll miss it. And it hints at something that could come later in the movie. As down on his luck as Rocky seems to be, the film subtly hints that there may be brighter days ahead, because in that club where he's fighting Spider Rico, the sign behind it, the name of that It's a dingy club, but the name of that club is the Resurrection Athletic Club. It's a brilliant way, really, of the filmmakers to indicate that Rocky may have a chance at redemption, although we don't see the signs of it yet. Very well planted seed that suggests there's more than meets the eye to this movie and to Rocky Balboa for sure. The biggest crucible then, folks, that Rocky faces and keeps facing is being underestimated by others and himself. One of the most poignant examples of that occurs when Rocky gets back home to his shabby apartment on the bad side of Philadelphia. He looks at himself in the mirror to practice a joke he plans to tell Adrian. We haven't met her yet in any detail, but he plans to tell this joke to Adrian, the shy, awkward woman who works at the pet store he visits every morning. And he berates himself for not telling the joke well enough, then catches a glimpse of a picture of him at age 8 that he's tucked into the mirror frame. This strikes me, Warwick, this is a poignant scene that without using any words shows just how sad and tough his life is, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, if it wasn't sad enough just seeing him getting beat up, in a gym by this fighter in a not particularly important fight at all, we see Rocky in his just dingy, gloomy apartment with around a mirror photos of his family and a photo of a young Rocky, aged 8, full of promise and hope. I'm sure that kid at age 8 had no idea what would happen to his older self, being a sort of a beat-up fighter, seemed to go nowhere. So it seems whatever hopes that a young Rocky had didn't materialize, and life seems grim. He's not seemed to go anywhere, and it is, again, not much reason for hope. So if you felt sad for him before getting beat up in the gym, you feel another level of sadness, a hope and a life that might have been that never came to fruition. So yeah, things are pretty sad at this point. We're all really rooting for him. We feel pretty sad for him at this moment in the movie.
Yeah, and it doesn't, right? In the very next beat, it doesn't get a whole lot better, right? Because we next see Rocky go to work as a collector for a loan shark named Gazzo. And he's been sent to get $200 to a man who works on the docks named Bob. Or Gazzo says, if you don't get the $200, break his thumb. Bob only has $130 though, but Rocky doesn't break his thumb. And the interesting thing about that scene, along with the scenes of Rocky playfully flirting with Adrian, indicate that despite all the damage life has been inflicting on him, and has since, as you indicated, he was 8. No matter how poorly he's been treated by others, he's still a gentle soul. He shows it again in a scene a bit later when he tries to convince a young girl named Marie, who's only 12, that she shouldn't hang around with the rough boys in the neighborhood talking dirty. Where at this aspect of Rocky Balboa's character, he's down but not out, living a hard life but not allowing himself to become emotionally hard, is a great picture of how to, as we sometimes say, weather the crucibles of life without allowing them to change our true nature. It's an important kind of resilience, isn't it?
Absolutely, Gary. In these early scenes in the movie, I think we're really struck by Rocky's character. I mean, life is not easy. His dreams, which we don't quite know what they are, but his dreams never seem to come to fruition. He's getting beat up in these fights every few weeks. But yet, he has a way of treating people that's not the way you would think. Typically, when you're beat up, you want to proverbially, or sometimes in reality, beat up other people. Bitter people tend to, be angry towards other people when they're being mistreated. So, Rocky's had a hard life. Things may not have materialized the way he wanted to. And it doesn't seem like he has much hope. But there's remarkable compassion and empathy that he has. He visits the pet shop often, as we'll see. I think in part it's because there's a woman there, Adrian, that he likes, is attracted to. And we see in his apartment these pets, if you will. You know, he has these turtles who he names Cuff and Link, which is very humorous. And he has a goldfish named Moby Dick. So clearly Rocky has some degree of imagination and humor. But, you know, he goes there because of Adrian. And what's remarkable, as we'll see, really one of the central themes of the movie. And in fact, in one of the movie posters, you would think it would have Rocky arms lifted high on the top of steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which we'll get to, or, you know, about with a big title match. But no, it's he and Adrian together in one of the posters. Well, why would you have a guy and a woman together in a poster of a movie that's all about boxing? Doesn't seem to make sense. As we'll see, it makes abundant sense. And what Rocky Balboa's relationship with Adrian shows is there's something about Rocky. He can see beneath the exterior the way many can't. So here's Adrian in the early scenes of the movie. She's an assistant sales clerk in this pet shop. She's a shy, almost plain-looking woman who does not feel good about herself. She wears glasses. She hides her face as much as she can beneath a wool-knit hat. But Rocky sees something different, something special in her. And I mean, Adrian's not the kind of woman that athletes are attracted to, frankly. They're attracted to, you know, very different people. But it says a lot about him that he sees something about her soul, her character that he really admires and he likes. And we'll learn more about that later in the movie. And the scene that you mentioned with Marie, this young girl who's hanging out with the wrong guys, also tells a lot about Rocky. We don't know that he knows it particularly well. She's just a girl in the neighborhood. But, you know, he tells her that it's just not a good look to hang out with those guys. He says, you should hang out with good friends, not yo-yo friends. That's Rocky says, and he said a colorful language.
Yeah, he also calls them coconuts in another scene. He calls them coconuts.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before, but that is so good. And the scene where Rocky is working for this loan shark, you know, Gatso. I mean, we feel badly for Rocky getting beat up all the time. Now he's working for a loan shark. I mean, surely there's better things he could do for his life than working for a loan shark. So that's frankly not a particularly good look on Rocky that he's doing that. But even though he's doing something that most of us would not think a particularly reputable line of work, he has compassion. He's told by Gatso, okay, either get the money from this guy or break his thumb. And he doesn't do it. Well, Gatso gets mad. He says, it's not a good look for me. You know, when I tell people you do this, and if you don't do this, you'll have the consequences will be, you know, your thumb will get broken. Basically, he feels like Gatso is this low-life loan shark is going to lose respect from people in the neighborhood if he doesn't carry through on his threats. But that's just not what Rocky does. So I think all of this shows that despite the tough breaks that Rocky's had in life, being a beat-up fighter, and now we know working for a loan shark, he has real compassion, empathy, and character. So basically, the hard knocks he's had in life has not really destroyed his soul. There's still some purity of his soul and character that's really remarkable and frankly not normal. And as the audience watching the movie, it just makes you want to root for Rocky all the more.
We didn't talk about this beforehand, but so Paulie, his best friend, is the brother of Adrian, the girl he's taken a shine to, the woman he's taken a shine to at the pet shop. And one of the things that he does that it just occurred to me that because throughout the entire movie, Paulie keeps trying to get Rocky to put in a good work for him to go work for Gazzo, collecting, you know, loans, right? And Rocky keeps putting them off. And that's another example, I think, Warwick, of he's putting his friends, you know, what's good for his friend ahead of what might be good for him. He never really says, you know, I don't want to do it because I'm embarrassed by it, because Paulie's a bit of an embarrassing character, but he just doesn't do it. And I think I have the benefit of having watched all of the series of films, and their relationship is strong throughout them. That really is another case, I think, his putting Paulie off and not giving Paulie an intro to the mob affiliated loan shark, I think is another example of his character, I think.
Yeah, it's such an excellent point, Gary. I mean, I think that interaction with Paulie, it shows that Rocky realizes that this is not a great profession to be in, working for a loan shark. And he wants to spare his friend doing something that he realizes in his heart of hearts he shouldn't be doing himself. But he certainly doesn't want his friend to be doing it. I'm not sure his friend, frankly, has the intimidation and physique, if you will,
Yes.
to be an enforcer.
Well said, Corey. Well said.
So, but I think looking at the comparison which unfolds in the movie between Paulie and Rocky is also interesting. Paulie is not a bad guy, but as we'll see, he is to a degree defined by his crucibles and the challenges in his life. And he feels bitter and angry. He feels like, oh, my one shot's going to be being an enforcer for a loan shark. Somehow he puts his hope in that position, which Rocky never gives him the intro for. But we see that Paulie really kind of mistreats, certainly verbally abuses his sister Adrian, and puts her down somehow because he's bitter. Bitter people tend to be bitter towards others, and for no good reason. I mean, Adrian is a wonderful woman. There's no reason that Paulie should just mistreat or put Adrian down, but there's a big contrast between how Paulie treats Adrian and how Rocky treats Adrian. Yet one of the many fascinating subplots in this movie that makes you think even more about Rocky and his character.
For sure. Excellent point. And speaking of Rocky and his characters, his crucibles keep coming, folks. At the boxing gym that he's worked out in for 6 years, he goes there one day and discovers that the owner, Mickey, has removed his belongings from his locker and given the locker to another fighter that Mickey, thinks has more promise, more potential. When Rocky asks him why he did it, why he put him on, as he calls it in the gym, they call it Skid Row. That's where your stuff gets put to when it gets pulled out of your locker and you're passed by. Rocky asks, Mickey, why am I on Skid Row? And Mickey berates him. He calls him a tomato. He tells him, you've got heart, but you fight like an ape. He even encourages Rocky to retire. That's when, after that, Rocky goes to his favorite bar to meet with Paulie. And he watches with the owner of the bar after Paulie leaves because Paulie's flustered about something. So Paulie runs out. Rocky sits at the bar, has a beer with the owner, and they watch on TV this interview with the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, Apollo Creed. And he happens to be in Philadelphia because he's going to stage a heavyweight title bout in 1976, the bicentennial of the United States. And the bar owner, in watching this interview with Rocky, starts putting Creed down and taking shots at Creed. And Rocky says, don't do that. Rocky gets angry at the bar owner, who's also, we presume, his friend, for putting down Apollo Creed, because Rocky praises the champ for, as Rocky put it, he took his shot, right? Rocky admires that about Apollo Creed, that he took his shot. And what's really great about the narrative of the movie is that soon thereafter, foreshadow alert, Rocky's going to get his shot too. That's because Mac Lee Green, the boxer that Creed has come to Philadelphia to fight, is out of commission. He broke his hand and he can't fight. Creed, facing the loss of the promotional money he's already spent on this bout, doesn't want to give it up, doesn't want to stop the fight from happening. He wants to find some angle that he can play to get a fight to still occur in Philadelphia at the Forum Club. And he hatches this idea: give a local fighter a chance to fight for the heavyweight championship. So he's actually going through a book. He's looking through a book trying to find some hook on a local fighter that he can challenge, who's an unknown. And he comes across Rocky Balboa's listing of fighters in Philadelphia. And he's mesmerized. He's caught by Rocky's nickname. That's the thing that makes him pick Rocky. Rocky's nickname, the Italian Stallion. Now, Warwick, I have not told you this before, but Rocky came out when I was 11 years old. So I was in grade school, and I was a huge fan of that movie. And I was also sort of incipiently trying out my hands as a writer. And for a class assignment, we had to write a script about something. And I wrote a script based on Rocky, where because I'm German with the last name Schneeberger, I was Rocky Kleinschmidt, okay? And my nickname, I was so proud of this. I still remember this. I was 11 years old. That was a long time ago, folks. My nickname, Rocky Kleinschmidt's nickname, was the German Sherman, like Sherman tank.
That is priceless. The German Sherman. Yes. Yeah, that has a ring about it. I mean, that could have been, I don't know, Rocky 2, 3, hey, Sylvester, I've got this great script. Let's kind of change it up a bit.
I'm telling you. And the Italian Stallion, the German Sherman, I got it to rhyme and everything, and 11. So I was pretty proud of myself, and clearly still am all these many years later. So, all right, we'll put a pin in that. We'll move on, folks. So Creed wants to fight Rocky because of the name, the Italian Stallion. But before Rocky learns that Creed wants to fight him, he takes Adrian on a date to a local ice skating rink. And it's a very sweet scene. And while he's there, he tells her the reason he's a boxer. This is his exact quote. I want to make sure I get it right. I'm going to read it. All I wanted to do out of fighting was to prove I was no bum, that I had the stuff to make a good pro. Further driving him was something he says his father told him once. His father told him, "You weren't born with much of a brain, so you better start using your body." This scene, I think, Warwick, spotlights something that fuels the crucibles of many people, being thought of as less than, feeling the need to prove themselves worthy of others' affection and respect. It is often easy to, when we are thought of as less than, to then show others that we think they're less than too. But that doesn't happen here. Why is how Rocky handles the situation such an important lesson for all of us?
At this point, Rocky's not received much positive affirmation. Mickey, the owner of the gym, is sort of thrown his belongings out of the locker, and Rocky's like, "Well, why?" And Mickey says, you've got heart, but you fight like an ape. I mean, basically, Mickey clearly does not think much of Rocky. And so that's obviously hurts. So here we have this scene where Rocky's interested in Adrian. He's, convinced to go out on a date with him. He finds this ice skating rink that's closed, but he kind of persuades the guy who's, tidying up the rink and all for a few dollars to let them have 10 minutes. And
$10 for 10 minutes.
That.
$10 for 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the deal. And it's just remarkable as Adrian's skating around the rink and, Rocky doesn't skate, so he's kind of holding her hand as he's sort of shuffling along the ice.
Right.
It's just a remarkable scene because, as you mentioned, Rocky's father said that Rocky, doesn't have much of a brain, so he better use his body. Ironically, Adrian says, "Well, my mother told me the opposite. She said that you don't have too much of a body, so you better use your brain," which is such a cruel thing for a mother to say to a daughter. But Rocky again encourages Adrian by saying that she's very shy by nature, and some people think being shy is a disease, but it doesn't bother him. I mean, he's clearly empathizing with her. When you're shy like that, you do feel almost like a leper, like, just don't look at me. And she does it level best for people not to look at it, with glasses and a hat pulled over part of her face. But he says they make a good couple. And then he makes a joke about it. He said, he is dumb and she's shy, So he just has this self-deprecating way of just creating a bond and empathy. And then he says, you've got to be a moron to be a fighter. He says you end up a bum. And, she in a remarkable moment of just encouragement, says she doesn't think he's a bum. So, so Rocky keeps encouraging, empathizing, and supporting Adrian. And Adrian, in a lot of ways, she really admires Rocky and perhaps, I think, sees the goodness and character that's within. And when you see somebody just encourage you like that, you begin to believe in them. And for one of the first times in the movie, we see somebody say something positive about Rocky, saying, right, "You're not a bum." She clearly admires him. Sometimes when we think less of ourselves, it can be soul destroying, and it can be very hard to move beyond the pits of our worst day, of our crucibles, when we feel no encouragement and support. And very often it can make us bitter and angry. And as I've said before, bitter people tend to take out their bitterness on others, often those closest to them, those closest to us. But Rocky doesn't do this. He does the reverse. He empathizes and encourages. We've seen Adrian, the girl in the neighborhood, Marie. He just goes out of his way to show compassion and encouragement to others. Very little has gone right to this point in Rocky's life. There's not much reason for him to show character and compassion towards others, but yet he does. And so I think this is an important model for all of us, that even when life has not gone our way, to be encouraging and supportive of others, to show our true character when we've been mistreated. It's such an important life lesson that we can learn from Rocky, and the example that he is really a role model for us in many ways.
Yeah, and you're right. He does a far better job, right, of showing empathy, compassion, kindness to others than he does to himself. Right, he's harder on himself. Right, as you said, he's dumb and she's shy to Adrian. He's not. He's harder on himself than he is on others. And that really comes through in the next scene in the movie. His lack of confidence is really spotlit on display when the promoter of the Creed fight, George Juergens, summons Rocky to his office, to Juergens' office. Rocky thinks it's because they want him to be a sparring partner for Apollo Creed for this big heavyweight fight that's going on. And that's not what Juergens is going to tell him. And watch this clip, folks, and take a look at just how uncomfortable Rocky is throughout.
Yes. May I help you? Oh, you must be Mr. Rocky Balboa. Mr. Juergens expecting you. Just a moment. Mr. Rocky Balboa to see you, sir. Fine. Will you please go in, Mr. Balboa?
Can I have that?
Oh, certainly.
Thanks.
Mr. Balboa. How are you? George Juergens. Take a chair, please.
Thanks.
Mr. Balboa.
Call me Rocky. It's
Rocky. Tell me, Rocky, you got any representation? You have a manager?
No, just me.
Oh. Well, Rocky, I've got a proposition I'd like to make to you.
A sparring?
Beg your pardon?
Well, I know you're looking for sparring partners, and I just want to say I'm very available, you know.
Sure you are.
Absolutely. Sparring with the champ would be an honor, and you know what, Mr. Juergens?
What?
I wouldn't take no cheap shots either. I'd really be a good sparring partner, you know.
You don't understand me, Rocky. My proposition's this. Would you be interested in fighting Apollo Creed for the World Heavyweight Championship?
No.
Listen, Rocky. Apollo's seen you fight. He likes you. He wants to fight you.
Well, it's just that you see, I fight in clubs, you know, and I'm really a ham and egg. This guy, he's the best, and it wouldn't be such a good fight. But thank you very much, you know, I appreciate it and all that.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Yeah.
Apollo Creed does. And he's going to prove it to the whole world by giving an unknown a shot at the title. And that unknown is you. He picked you, Rocky. Rocky, it's the chance of a lifetime. You can't pass it by. What do you say?
You probably noticed, especially if you did more than listen and watched on YouTube, folks, Rocky never makes eye contact with Juergens throughout the entire scene. Even after he finds out, he's not there to be interviewed to be a sparring partner. He's there to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world with Apollo Creed. And Rocky initially, right, says no. He says he can't do it. He's a ham and egger, he says. But he changes and accepts it when Juergens tells him, as you saw in the clip, he can't let this opportunity pass him by. It's a chance of a lifetime. Well, then the fight gets announced, and people around Rocky start coming up to him, talking to him about it. First one is Gazzo, who tells him that you ain't never had any luck, but this time Lady Luck may be in your corner. And then Mickey shows up and offers to be Rocky's manager. Now remember, Mickey threw him out of his locker, threw him on Skid Row, all of his stuff on Skid Row. Now Mickey shows up and wants to be Rocky's manager. They get in a fight and an argument. Rocky gets increasingly angry because Mickey never expressed support beforehand. But he is also angry at himself, Rocky is, for not being prepared or talented enough to take this opportunity, to seize this opportunity. In some ways, he probably thinks Mickey's a little right about the way that he said that he maybe wasted his talent. Mickey leaves Rocky's apartment, and you can hear it. It's a great scene as Mickey's walking away from the apartment. You can hear Rocky still screaming in his apartment, saying that he's never had a prime. Right? Mickey had a prime. He's been in the boxing game his whole life. Mickey had a prime. I never had a prime. And then he screams, "Sure, I'll fight him. I'll get my face kicked in." This kind of negative self-talk, Warwick, is so destructive to us when we're going through a crucible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so true, Gary. I mean, we see in the scenes with Adrian that, Rocky just does not have any confidence. And when he's in the office of the promoter Juergens, who's promoting this world heavyweight championship fight with Apollo Creed, Rocky just assumes that he's going to be there to be a sparring partner. Says, I can do a good job, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. And then when, the promoter Juergens says, "No, Rocky, Apollo Creed wants you to be the contender," and explains the whole situation, I guess the implicit with the bicentennial and the underdog and, sort of man of the people, if you will, all of this kind of thing in Philadelphia. And, Apollo Creed clearly thinks it's a great promotional stunt, if you will. But Rocky shows a lot of self-awareness. And as you said, just saying, this won't be a good fight. He realizes he's no match for Apollo Creed. Right. He has no illusions of grandeur. Oh, I can take him. Yeah, one good punch and that's it. He could, right. And it's true, one good punch, and yeah, anything can happen. But he realizes he's nowhere near the boxer, nowhere near the talent that Apollo Creed is. Just doesn't have that ability or training. So, earlier, as you say, when that scene in the gym where Rocky asks, why to Mickey, why have you given me a hard time all these years? And Mickey says to Rocky, you have the talent to be a good fighter, and instead, you're doing work for a second-rate loan shark. Rocky says it's a living. And then Mickey says one of the most cutting things you could say to somebody: it's a waste of life. It's basically saying to Rocky, you've wasted your life. You had talent, ability, and you've wasted it. Talk about putting the dagger in somebody's heart. That's in the opposite of a fellow traveler who's encouraging you. That's like, your worst enemy putting the knife in And you know when that knife does damage? When you know what they're saying is 100% true. That's when it really, cuts to your soul. And that's what Mickey did in that particular scene. And so, when Mickey finds out about this title fight and goes to see Rocky in his apartment, they just begin yelling at each other, just screaming. And you can see sort of years of frustration in the case of Mickey. He's been doing this for 50 years. We learned he's like 76 years old. He's been doing this for years and probably is pretty frustrated at his own life. And so they both yell at each other saying, Ricky, and so Rocky says to Mickey, I needed your help 10 years ago, but that Mickey didn't care. And then Mickey says, well, why didn't you ask me for help? And Rocky says he did. Mickey obviously probably doesn't really look at it that way. He walks away crestfallen, and Rocky yells and feels he has no chance. He's so angry. So, sometimes when life is going against us and we feel so angry about life, when an opportunity comes up, it can feel like a cruel joke. Oh yeah, the title fight against the heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, come on. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. This is not going to work out. What is this about? People just want to laugh at me. So, rather than this opportunity giving Rocky hope, it makes him angrier, bitter even. So, I think when life is going against us, it's important to have hope, because if you don't have hope, then life seems hopeless. And if you don't have hope when an opportunity comes up, you won't take advantage of it. And at this point, we don't really know if Rocky is, where things are going to go with this fight, even if he accepts it, it just seems like he has this attitude, I'm going to get beat up, it's all hopeless. And there's not much redemption at this point in the movie. There's not much room for hope.
Yeah.
This is almost one of the lowest ebbs in the movie, the scene that ends with Mickey storming out of Rocky's apartment.
Right. And one of the things, though, that speaks to the character of Rocky, the grit of Rocky, is that it doesn't last long. Mickey doesn't get all the way down the street before Rocky comes running out of his apartment to go get him. And he reconsiders and he asks Mickey to help him. He starts training, and the first session is not very encouraging. One of the things he tries to do, Philadelphia Museum of Art has these long, tall steps, and Rocky tries to run up them in a tattered old sweatsuit. And, about 2/3 of the way up, he starts getting really slowed down. Then he kind of stumbles and he's coughing, and he can barely walk his way to the top by the time it's over. But under Mickey's tutelage and Mickey's belief in him, he turns the corner. That famous training montage from Rocky to the hit song Gonna Fly Now finally shows Rocky hopeful. To your point, you said he didn't have hope. It finally shows him he gets hope. And it shows him happy, working hard to get in shape and enjoying it. His final sprint up the museum steps ends in emotional jubilation. And what's interesting is that those steps become very iconic for the Rocky franchise over the years, through movies 1 through 6, and even into the Creed films that show Apollo Creed's son of recent years. In fact, in the third movie, when Rocky is, and I'm not, there's no spoiler alert here, because most of you folks, if you have an interest, you already know that Rocky does indeed, in Rocky 2, beat Apollo, get the title, and then he has the title, and he has to learn how to deal with all this great success in Rocky 3. But in Rocky 3, the city of Philadelphia builds a statue near these steps of Rocky to celebrate their favorite son. And Warwick, this will not surprise you at all to see that I, if you're on YouTube, friends, if not, go check it out. I have the resin statue of the Rocky statue that's in the movie for my desk to inspire me to indeed go the distance, as it were. This is a powerful picture work, all that we've been talking about here, of the change a mindset shift can make in our lives after a crucible, and the importance of supportive fellow travelers, right? This is really a pivotal point in the movie and a pivotal point for us to grasp as we navigate our own crucibles.
So true, Gary. I mean, that scene in the movie where, you've got Mickey and Rocky yelling and screaming at each other, both thinking the other guy should have moved first and should have encouraged me and reached out. And they're both bitter about their lots and lives and how things haven't gone the way they'd hoped. But you're right. It doesn't take Rocky long when he just sort of races out of his apartment and, finds Mickey and talks to him and hugs him. I mean, that's a remarkable mindset shift. I think Rocky realizes it doesn't matter anymore who should have reached out first. He realizes that Mickey has spent his whole life in the boxing world and can help him. When earlier, Mickey makes the comment, hey, you've got great heart, but you fight like an ape. Rocky realizes, well, that's true. That's a fair estimation of my ability. And so clearly this guy, Mickey, knows what he's talking about when it comes to boxing. So that scene where he puts his arm around is touching. And you can see that Rocky has made a decision to shift his mindset from one of hopelessness or, life's just meant to be one big crucible, and do this loan shark deal and enforcer for a loan shark for Gatso, and I do my, low-level fights every couple of weeks. Life is not particularly hopeful. But now, for the first time in his life, he takes training seriously where he'd never had before. So you see him wake up and eating raw eggs. You see him getting out almost before the crack of dawn, early in the morning, jogging and running through the streets of Philadelphia. And as you say, culminating in running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And, as he trains and improves, he begins to have hope. You're right. The joy in Rocky's face as he lifts his arms up on the top of the steps is fantastic. His whole demeanor has changed. He now has hope. He now says, I think I can have an impact. I think I can make a difference. His whole attitude is just remarkably different. So he's beginning to have people that support and believe in him. He has a manager, Mickey, who wants to train him, who clearly believes he has a shot of making an impact. I don't know about winning the whole title, but he feels like he can make a difference. Adrian, his girlfriend, clearly believes in him. And what's remarkable is even the loan shark, Gatso, believes in him. Right. I mean, this is a loan shark. We're not high on a pecking order of, people of moral fiber who contribute to society. Correct. It's pretty kind of down there. Yes. And he believes in him so much that he gives him $500 for training money. Loan sharks don't give money out for free. Right. Because it's meant to be a loan. They don't call them like gift sharks or, gift dolphins or some such phrase. Gift dolphins. I love gift dolphins. We're going to use that. Gift dolphins. Bravo. There you go. Yeah. Be a gift dolphin, not a loan shark, I guess. But I mean, people like Gatso don't give money for free, and he gives him $500 for training money. And he also gives encouragement. Again, loan sharks are not known for encouraging people. He says that Rocky, never had any luck, but maybe Lady Luck will, shine on Rocky this time. So I think this whole interaction shows both the importance of a mindset shift and a supportive group of fellow travelers. And it's the interplay, the interaction in the mindset shift and fellow travelers that's so important. So in Rocky's case, when he decides to take the championship fight on, it almost increased the support and encouragement of his fellow travelers. It shows how it's almost a flywheel effect, a positive flywheel effect between the two. And it's interesting to me that as his mindset shifts, the level of support of his fellow travelers, they increase. People who you don't even think of as fellow travelers come out of the woodwork, such as Gatso the loan shark. So I think it's important for us to realize We need fellow travelers who are supportive. But in some ways, it all starts with having a mindset shift. Because then when we shift our mindset, I think that really turbocharges the encouragement and support that we can get from fellow travelers. So for having fellow travelers is important, but you've got to shift your mindset. People can't help you if you turn them away, if you yell and scream at them. People can only help you if you shift your mindset, are willing to be helped, and realized, it's possible to make a difference. It's possible to turn my life around.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you pointed out that Gazzo gives him $500 in today's money, Warwick, because the movie was 1976, just to show how unexpectedly generous Gazzo is. That is $500 in today's money is $2,755.25. So Gazzo's giving him not an insubstantial amount of money to help him train.
Yeah, so true. That's real money from Gazzo's perspective.
But Rocky is not completely out of the woods yet, even with that flywheel turning. The doubts creep back in. As Adrian sleeps in his apartment, which she's moved into, Rocky is restless. He heads to the forum where the match is to be held, talks briefly with Jurgens, who dismissively says, I'm sure you're going to give us a great show. Like, oh, there, young man, you're gonna give us a great show, right? It's dismissively, almost insultingly said to Rocky. And then Rocky goes home to confess to Adrian that he is determined he can't win the fight. Then he says this, but it don't matter, he says, because I was a nobody before. But he does tell Adrian about his goal for the fight. He says this to her, all I want to do is go the distance. Nobody's ever gone the distance with Creed. If that bell rings and I'm still standing, then I'm going to know for the first time in my life that I weren't just another bum from the neighborhood. This is a great example, isn't it, Warwick, of how a mindset shift and the encouragement of fellow travelers can help us shoot for a goal we never would have thought possible before, isn't it?
Absolutely, Gary. I think it really shows the importance of our mindset shift, and the encouragement of fellow travelers can really help us shoot for just this incredible goal. I mean, you look back a few scenes in the movie, if you asked Rocky Balboa, okay, if for some reason Apollo Creed wants to offer you an opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship, do you think it's a reasonable goal that you could survive and survive 17 rounds without being knocked out? He would have said in the pre-training, put your arms around Mickey and give him a hug. He'd say, there's no way. I'm a joke as a fighter. I'm a bum. I mean, Mickey's right. I've got heart, but I'm an ape. I mean, this guy is very talented. I'm not. There's no way I could survive in the ring. No way. So what changes? Well, it's a combination of his mindset shift, which leads him to train, which gives him more hope. As you rightly say, Gary, in the first scene where he's running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, he's huffing and puffing and wheezing. By the end of it, he is rocketing on up there. And as your statue clearly shows, his arms are aloft.
Here it is again, folks, just so you see it.
He's believing something good can happen. He's believing his goal is actually mission possible, which is crazy. I mean, this is a nobody. The chance of him going the distance is like 1,000,000 to 1. At least most fight experts, most boxing aficionados would say, no way. I mean, I hope the guy lasts a few rounds, but no way is he lasting the distance. Can't happen. No names don't last the distance. Never happened. Never will happen. Nobody's ever lasted the distance with Apollo Creed. But that combination of fellow travelers and a mindset shift is really making a huge difference in how he, aims for goals and sets them. So I think it's important to have goals and for them to be realistic. But this shows that we can aim for goals we never thought possible if we shift our mindsets from, this will never work to, okay, maybe with the appropriate training, maybe this is mission possible with the support and encouragement of our friends and fellow travelers. It can turn a mission impossible into what really is a big goal in this sense, but it's an attainable goal. And he works at it with training and diet to do whatever he can to achieve that goal. So it's remarkable how he goes from being this down and out, hopeless, tragic figure to somebody you think, I don't know if he can make this goal, but he's doing his level best to make it. And he does have the toughness. He does have the perseverance and the character. It seems impossible, but just maybe he could make it. So we as the audience, we're thinking, I don't know if he's going to make it, but yeah, I think maybe he has a shot. It's just a remarkable shift based on the combination of his supportive fellow travelers and his mindset shift. And he now is going for a goal that in the early stage of the movie, you would laugh at it. You would think, is this another cruel joke?
Right.
But you're not thinking it's a cruel joke anymore. You're thinking, you know what? It could be possible. Maybe he can reach this goal.
Well, that question gets answered pretty quickly after what we've been talking about. The film concludes with the fight between Apollo and Rocky. And one of the things that was surprising to me watching this again, and as many times as I've watched it work, it was surprising to me because how memorable that scene is in my mind and in moviegoers' minds everywhere, that it only takes the final 9 minutes and 14 seconds of the entire runtime of Rocky. It's less than 10 minutes, the actual fighting in this scene. But it's so memorable, so adrenaline rousing. I mean, when this movie came out when I was 11, Warwick, my friend Jimmy Smith, if you're listening, Jim, how you doing? My friend Jimmy Smith got so aggravated with me because I walked around all the time punching him in the shoulder. I was dancing and punching all the time because I was just so thrilled by that. And that scene, that final scene of the fight, so thrilling, so evocative, takes less than 10 minutes. That is crazy to me. When Rocky enters the ring at the beginning of those 10 minutes, or less than 10 minutes, he gets cheers and shouts of "We love you, Rocky," a far different welcome than we saw in the opening scene in the Resurrection Athletic Club. He knocks Creed down in the first round, then takes all the punishment the champ can give him. He breaks Creed's ribs. Rocky's eye is so swollen shut that he has to get the swelling cut open in his corner. The fight ends with Adrian coming out from the locker room in the waning minutes. The fight's over. We're waiting for the decision. Adrian comes running out so she can meet with Rocky. The camera focuses at that time on their reunion. They trade I love yous. And in the background, it's hard to even know who won the fight. I remember being confused. Did he win? Did he lose at the end of the fight? If you pay, and even last night, when I rewatched it, I had to play it back 3 or 4 times to make sure that you can hear it. He does lose the fight in a split decision to a Creed. 2 judges voted for Apollo, 1 judge voted for Rocky, and Rocky loses. But he doesn't care, right? He has Adrian in the middle of the ring. They're hugging. They're in love, and that's the beat on which the movie ends. The way this last scene is filmed, Warwick, is a great example, isn't it, of the mindset we need to have to move beyond our crucibles. A life of significance is more important than a life of success. That sums it up pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so true, Gary. I love this last scene in the movie, as you say, 10 minutes or less, but you don't really mind.
Right.
Because the whole emotional arc of the movie that sets it up, that's what the movie is about. As we said earlier, the poster of this movie, rather than just, Rocky, hands aloft, either in the match or at the top of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, it's him and Adrian together. I mean, that shows that it's more than just a pure boxing movie. Boxing is sort of the metaphor arc of the story. But what's kind of interesting is I think you see quite a difference in the character of Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. And there are lessons we can learn from that because, Rocky realized that going the distance against the champion would be very difficult. he realized he did not have the boxing ability that Apollo Creed did, as we see in some of the early rounds. Apollo just is nimble, dancing around and just jabbing with like a left jab Rocky at will. So, Rocky realizes, I don't have that kind of finesse or ability that Apollo Creed does. He knows that. He knows he's going to have to train very hard just to survive, the brutal punishment that he'll receive. But, Rocky takes this seriously. On the other hand, Apollo Creed does not take this fight at all seriously. Whereas Rocky trains harder than he's ever had before. And in fact, we see a scene where Rocky is, punching meat carcasses as if they were punching bags. I mean, pretty interesting way of training that I'm assuming Apollo Creed never did.
Yes.
But you look at Apollo Creed, he is not taking this whole thing seriously. As you mentioned, it's 1976, the bicentennial of the United States. So here's Apollo Creed coming into the ring dressed like George Washington in a boat. It's all sort of razzmatazz, and it's all about the event and the just kind of the show business nature of it. And until Rocky knocks Apollo Creed down in an early round, Apollo Creed is not taking this very seriously. Just with his jabbing here and there, and
he's clowning
no big
around.
deal.
He's doing a lot of stuff that Muhammad Ali did, right?
Exactly. And so at this point, once he gets knocked down, so okay, this is a match. Yeah, I need to take this seriously, because he did not want to lose. That would be a humiliation, and certainly for Apollo Creed, humiliation is not something that he wants. Self-respect, winning, all those things are important to him. So he starts taking this very seriously, and round after round, they're both getting beat up. You see that Rocky just keeps pounding the midsection of Apollo. Mickey knows that's his great strength, his ability to pound the body. And as you say, Apollo gets the broken ribs throughout it. So he's hanging in there. And he's smart enough to realize that the only way you survive is if you can dish out as much punishment on Apollo Creed as he's getting from him. He's not going to survive by just trying to avoid him. Eventually, he's going to get knocked out, or something's going to happen. But by the end of this fight, neither of them have much energy to do anything. So in that sense, mission accomplished. He is survived by, taking it to Apollo and dishing out an incredible amount of punishment. At the end of the movie, you're right, Rocky may not have won, but he's won the admiration with the fans and friends. Where in the early scene of the movie, people are booing him. They're not booing him now. The fans are cheering his name. They're cheering, Rocky, Rocky. At the beginning of the movie, if you said to him, people are going to cheer your name in a fight, he would have said, yeah, no, I'm a bum. They don't deserve to cheer me. But now they're just amazed that he's done what nobody's ever done before. He's lasted the distance against Apollo Creed. And as if not, I would say, more importantly, he's won the heart of his girlfriend, who just comes up to him in the ring and, says that she loves him. He says he loves her. And what you see with Adrian is somebody that truly loves him, but not just loves him, she admires him and his character. And I think this closing scene of the movie, it shows that no matter how grim and dire our life may look like, there is still hope. And it shows that life is not about winning. It's about being true to your values and beliefs, and about caring for others. And what to me is remarkable, and this is one of the interesting plots of the movie, is in one sense, Rocky is a fellow traveler to Adrian.
Right. I was
the movie is about
that
Rocky.
earlier. I'm glad you brought that up. I was just thinking about that.
It's not about Adrian in that sense, and it's called Rocky, not Adrian, in terms of the title of the movie. But yet you look at how Adrian and the arc of her character and her life in this movie, she goes from being this shy, introverted, mousy-like character who believes what her mom said, that she's not very pretty. She believes those terrible cutting words that, her mother said to her. And so she hides behind glasses. She stoops. She has this green knit hat that obscures part of her face. Well, by the end of the movie, there are no glasses. There's no hat. She's dressed nicely.
No, she's wearing she's wearing a fashionable red beret. She's got like a, she's dressed to the nines at the end of the movie. Yeah,
exactly. She's not hiding her face.
Right.
At that point, Adrian thinks much better of herself. She thinks, you know what? I'm worthy of being loved. She may even think, you know what? I admire Rocky, but he's lucky to have me. I think she probably thinks that. So her self-image has gone up a huge amount, in large part due to Rocky. Certainly not to a brother, Paulie, who, not a bad guy, but just keeps, in this movie anyway, keeps putting her down and, is not helpful. So I just love this end of the movie where you see that these really two twin achievements, if you will, or maybe two twin parts of this movie. You see that Rocky has, in a sense, maybe not won the match, but he's won in the sense of he's achieved his goal of going the distance. And you see that he has a woman that really loves him, who he has selflessly helped transform her own self-belief and the way she feels about herself. It's a remarkable end of the movie. And, it's really a great life of significance that we see that Rocky is living and has lived.
Yeah. Before I ask you what I ask you in every episode of this series, I want to just take folks back to that first scene that we talked about. The boxing club, that seedy boxing club that Rocky fought Spider Rico in, was named the Resurrection Boxing Club. And I think indeed what you've just described, Warwick, is a redemption story. And there's the resurrection of Rocky Balboa in this film, and it's moving, and not just because, not even maybe primarily because of the boxing, but as you pointed out a couple times, because of his life of significance with Adrian. So the question I ask you at the end of every episode of this series, now 8 parts in, we have one more part to go. What's the one big thing that you hope our listeners and viewers take away from Rocky?
When life seems pretty dire and grim, and things are not going your way, it's important to realize, just because life may be grim at the moment, you may feel like this crucible will never end. You have a bottomless pit that you're living in that can only get deeper. It does not have to be the end of your story. And as we see with Rocky, we see this twin things going on in his life. He has a mindset shift. He says, okay, I'm going to go for this fight. I'm going to have a realistic goal of trying what he thinks is a pretty audacious goal, but he believes it's realistic, of going the distance with Apollo Creed. And then he decides, I'm going to do whatever I take, to achieve my goal. I'm going to train. I'm going to eat right. And I'm going to get the support of people who are experts and people who can encourage me. So it's this, twin things going on of a mindset shift and the support and encouragement of fellow travelers that provide the way back, that provide the way out of the pit. He's decided to move forward with his life. He's decided he's going to receive help and ask for help from fellow travelers. The other aspect that I think this movie, Rocky, shows us is the importance that as we try to move forward, it's got to be anchored by our beliefs and values. Now, there's times in this movie where Rocky is at his lowest ebb. He feels bad about himself. But you see throughout the movie that he has a sense of compassion, a sense of empathy, a sense of character, of standing up for people, encouraging Adrian, encouraging the teenage girl, Marie, of caring for Paulie, not wanting to have him mixed up in the whole loan shark business, of not wanting to break the hand of a guy that owes, Gatso money. Time and again, we see that Rocky Balboa, he lives his values and beliefs. And we talk all the time about life is not about money and success, nothing wrong with money and success, but life, should be about serving others, should be about a higher purpose, what we call a life of significance. And that's what we see in the movie Rocky, and that's what we see in the character and the heart of Rocky Balboa. His life is a life of significance. He cares for people, even when life is bleak. He pours his love and admiration into others, in particular to Adrian. That's what makes his life different than others. Certainly, his life is very different than Apollo Creed. And that's what makes his life a life of significance. So I think this shows that in your life, you can have a great impact and a life of significance without quote unquote winning, which in this movie, Rocky Balboa doesn't quote win, but yet in one sense, he wins the larger match, the larger fight. He wins the ultimate championship, which is that of life, of a life of significance, caring for others and living a life in light of his values and beliefs of caring for others and seeing that life is not just about you, it's about a higher purpose and trying to serve others. It's an incredible message that we have in this movie.
Yeah, Rocky ends the movie being the world heavy significance champion, right? I mean, that's where he lands.
Well said.
That's where he lands for sure. And that, as you wrap that up, Warwick, this idea of he didn't win and yet he did win, right? Is just such a perfect place to land this discussion and roll the credits on episode 8 of our series. Before we let you go, though, folks, we're going to do what we do every time we do one of these episodes of the series. We're going to ask you a reflection question, something for you to ponder. And this one's interesting. I think they're all interesting, but this one's particularly interesting in the context of the movie. And that question is this: what's one area of your life in which you want to go the distance? How can you shift your mindset? And who do you need to be your fellow travelers to encourage and support you on the journey that awaits? With that, we will wrap episode 8 of our series. We'll see you next week, and we'll save a seat for you. Welcome to a journey of transformation with the Beyond the Crucible assessment. Unlike any other, this tool is designed to guide you from adversity to achievement. As you answer a few insightful questions, you won't just find a label like the helper or the individualist. Instead, you'll uncover your unique position in the journey of resilience. This assessment reveals where you stand today, the direction you should aim for, and crucially, the steps to get there. It's more than an assessment. It's a roadmap to a life of significance. Ready? Visit beyondthecrucible.com. Take the free assessment and start charting your course to a life of significance today.